Hi kids, welcome to our mathematics class. Our topic for today is kinds of proportion. I am your teacher, Teacher Zaida. In this video lesson, we will be focusing on direct and inverse proportion. Okay, but before we start, let's have a short review. Okay, in this proportion, 3, 6, 1, and 2 are called terms. Okay, now the terms inside the proportion are called the means, while the terms outside the proportion are called the extremes. Okay, okay, let's define direct proportion. Direct proportion states that if one term increases, the other term also increases, or vice versa. If one term decreases, the other term also decreases. Did you get that? Okay. So for example, let's read the problem. Eloise can decorate 2 cakes in 3 hours. How long will it take if she will decorate 6 cakes? Again, Eloise can decorate 2 cakes in 3 hours. How long will it take if she will decorate 6 cakes? Okay, let's have our proportion from the given problem. And our proportion will be 2:3 is equal to 6:n. Okay, now let's look at our first ratio. Our first ratio is cakes to hours ratio. So if our first ratio is cakes to hours, then our second ratio must also be cakes to hours ratio. Did you get that? Okay. Okay, now let's look at our first terms, 2 and 6. This term increased, so therefore, our second term must also increase. Did you get that? Okay, very good. Okay, let's find the value of n. So again, our proportion is 2:3 is equal to 6:n. Okay, if this is a direct proportion, then we will just use the rule, the product of the means is equal to the product of the extremes. So let's get the product of the means. We have 3 times 6 is equal to 18. Okay, and the product of our extremes, we have 2 times n is equal to 2n. So again, we equate the means and the extremes. We have 2n is equal to 18, or 18 is equal to 2n. Okay, and then we have to get the value of n. So to have n, we just have to divide both sides by 2. Okay, so we cancel 2. So we will be left with n, and n is equal to 18 divided by 2, and that will give us 9. Okay, and then we put our label hours. So our final answer is n is equal to 9 hours. So meaning, if Eloise can finish decorating 2 cakes in 3 hours, then she will be finished decorating 6 cakes in 9 hours. Did you get that? Questions? Okay, very good. Okay, now let's have inverse or indirect proportion. Now, inverse proportion states that if one term increases, the other term decreases, or vice versa. If one term decreases, the other term increases. Did you get that? Okay, very good. Okay, let's have an example. Let's read the problem. Eloise can finish the job in 3 hours. Patricia can do the same. They worked together. How long will it take them to finish the same job? Again, Eloise can finish the job in 3 hours. Patricia can do the same. If they worked together, how long will it take them to finish the same job? Did you get the problem? Okay, let's try to solve the problem. Let's have our proportion. We have 1 is to 3 is equal to 2 is to n. So our first ratio is workers to hours ratio, meaning our second ratio must also be workers to hours ratio. Did you get that? Okay, now, if you look at our first term increased. Since this is an inverse proportion, what do you think will happen to our other term? Again, the first term increased, therefore the other term must, okay, very good. The other term must decrease. Okay, again, inverse proportion states that if one term increases, the other term decreases. Question? Okay, very good. Okay, let's find the value of n. Now, how do we solve the n if our proportion is an inverse proportion? So again, our first ratio is 1 is to 3. Our second ratio is 2 is to n. Okay, to solve this, we have to get the product of the terms in the first ratio. Okay, and we equate that to the product of the terms in the second ratio. Again, the product of the terms of the first ratio is equal to the product of the terms of the second ratio. Did you get that? Okay. Okay, let's find the value of n. So again, our proportion is 1 is to 3 is equal to 2 is to n. Okay, and again, to solve an inverse proportion, we have to get the product of the terms of the first ratio, and that is 1 times 3. It will give us 3. And get the product of the terms in the second ratio, and that is 2 times n, and that will give us 2n. Okay, and then we equate the product of the terms of the first ratio and the product of the terms of the second ratio. So 3 is equal to 2n, or 2n is equal to 3. Okay, now to get the value of n, we just have to divide n by, okay, very good, we have to divide n by 2. So we cancel 2. N is equal to 3 halves, and we simplify 3 halves. So therefore, n is equal to 1.5. Okay, and then we put our label hours. So final answer, n is equal to 1.5 hours. Did you get that? Okay, good job. Okay, I hope that you were able to understand our lesson and is now ready to answer our module. Okay? Until next time, goodbye.